podcast where today we are going to be doing our sort of end of regular season mock draft. Now, I know this is coming out a week later. Again, as I said in my playoff bracket video, I was a little busy and wasn't able to record the video, so I thought I'd just wait till Monday to do a little mock draft Monday on top of it being our end of regular season mock draft. We know the top 24 picks. I guess technically not because outside of the Steelers Texans game, we know the rest of the draft order for the top 24 for the teams that basically are focused on the draft now as they are not in the playoffs. So this will be our end of season mock draft right before the last wild card game. And then our next one will probably be somewhere towards the end of the postseason. Once the Super Bowl's over, we'll probably release our next one. But without further ado, let's get into this mock draft. So the first pick, we have the Raiders at 1. I think this is pretty easy. I think they go Fernando Mendoza. I mean, he's the best quarterback available, Heisman winner. He's played great this entire playoff run. I guess they've only played 2 games, but he's been great. They need a quarterback. The Geno Smith experiment wasn't it. They moved on. They haven't moved on from him, but they moved on from Pete Carroll. I think they're going to bring in their new coach, and he's going to have his pick at quarterback, whether it's Mendoza or Dante Moore. But I think, especially after the playoff game we just watched between Indiana and Oregon, I think Mendoza is the quarterback you take first, and the guy who I think the Raiders end up taking number 1 overall. The Jets are on the board at 2, another team that we could see go quarterback here and take Dante Moore. I think Mendoza and Moore are the only quarterbacks who end up going in the first round. I don't think we see a guy like Ty Simpson or Chambliss or Nussmeier go to teams like Pittsburgh or the Rams. I think it's just going to be Moore and Mendoza that go in the first round. And I could very well see the Jets going with Dante Moore. They could go receiver, but they do have the 16th pick from the Sauce Gardner trade that they could end up taking a receiver or a defensive player with. I think this is a pretty obvious pick as well for the Jets. I know he didn't have the greatest playoff game against Indiana, but I think Dante Moore is a first round caliber quarterback, and I do think the Jets end up taking him at number 2. As just like the Raiders with their Geno Smith experiment didn't work, neither did the Jets and their Justin Fields experiment either. He's a free agent next year, so if he just sits on the bench the whole year, I don't think the Jets will be too. I don't think it'll affect the Jets too much because they can just let him walk next year and start more this season, or they could keep more on the bench for a little bit just so they don't throw him out there right away. But I do think they take Dante Moore. Now the Cardinals pick at 3. They could also go quarterback, but again, I don't think you go Ty Simpson 3rd overall. And honestly, I have no idea who the Cardinals are going to take here. They could honestly take anything. The only thing I don't think they need is interior D line because of Walter Nolan, tight end because of Trey McBride, and they probably don't need receiver. But outside of that, they could literally use anything. And I think when that's the case, you lean towards best player available, which is either probably Caleb Downs or Arvell Reese. And I think you go Arvell Reese out of Ohio State. He can play the pass rush off tackle on the line, and he can also play off ball linebacker as well. And I think he is the best player on the board. And in the Cardinals position, without a quarterback, in my opinion, worth taking 3, you go best player available, and that is Arvell Reese. Especially, they need to fix their defense. I think their defense overall is more of a need than their offense, even though the offense it has its positions like line, O-line, quarterback, maybe, but their defense could use some help as well. So why not go with the best player on defense available in Arvell Reese? Titans are up at number 4. They could go offense here, could go with a Jeremiah Love, although Tony Pollard didn't have himself a bad season. You could go with receiver, get a guy like Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate, uh, even a Makai Lemon, even though I don't think he'd be the first receiver taken. But I think it's a similar position to the Cardinals. They have so many needs that I think you just go best player available. which I think is either Caleb Downs or maybe even a guy like Ruben Bain. And I just think that edge rusher is more of an important is a more important position than safety. Like if you can it's really hard to find a franchise edge rusher. And I think there's been a little bit of a trend recently of safeties going lower than maybe we think they deserve to go. So I'm going to go Ruben Bain here to the Titans at number 4, just over David Bailey. I think it's a you could argue either one as the top edge rusher off the board. I'm just going to go with Ruben Bain, reunite him with his college teammate Cam Ward. I'd assume they played it. They played college together, I'm pretty sure. The Giants are up at 5. I think you go offense here, build around Jackson Dart. If they do think he's their franchise quarterback, which I think, I don't know if I'm ready to go to the point where I think he's their franchise quarterback, but I definitely think he deserves to be their starter for a few more years. So I think you do got to build around him and go offense here. I don't think you need running back because you got Cam Scadaboo, and they have good depth around Cam Scadaboo as well. I think you go receiver because we don't know what's going to happen with Malik Neighbors. And outside of Malik Neighbors, it's guys like Wandale Robinson and Sterling Shepard. But Carnell Tate's on the board. And one thing I feel like we've learned over time is that when in doubt, draft an Ohio State receiver. And Carnell Tate is really good. I don't think he's better than Jeremiah Smith, but he's not that far off from Jeremiah Smith. So I'm going to have the Giants take Carnell Tate, pair him alongside Malik Neighbors. You have Cam Scadaboo. Tight end position, I don't mind Theo Johnson. That's a pretty solid set of skill players around Jackson Dart. So I think they beef up that offense with Carnell Tate, especially because their most important position on defense is probably corner. And do you want to take Jermon McCoy or Mansour Delane at pick 5 when Carnell Tate's right there? Probably not. Browns are up at 6. Another team that I think can just load up on offensive talent around their quarterback. The same take I had with Dart, I think is very similar to Shedeur Sanders. I don't know if he's necessarily their future franchise quarterback for the next decade, but I think they should have him be their quarterback for the next 2, 3 years. Therefore, I think they should build around him, especially because their defense is just so good. Now, they can invest in defense later because they do have Jacksonville's pick at 24, so they could still invest in defense later on in the draft, but I think their offense is just so bad, especially compared to their defense. And you could go lineman here. You could get a Spencer Fano, I think is how you say it, a Francis Buaga. I could be butchering those two names, but I think they need receiver because outside of Jerry Jeudy, you don't really have anything. You have running backs that you like. You have your tight ends. You don't really have much at the receiver position. So I'm gonna have them take Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. In my opinion, the second best receiver in the class. You need to give Shedeur a guy on that receiver position that he can develop with that's young, that is also really good. Because again, it's Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, Isaiah Bond are his top receivers. So I think Jordan Tyson could immediately become the best receiver on Cleveland if he was drafted there. Commanders are next up at 7. I think you're okay on offense if you're Washington. I think you really need to focus on their defense because their defense was really bad. It was banged up. Don't get me wrong, they were very injured on both sides of the ball, but their defense needs some work. And I think it's between Caleb Downs, if you just want to go best defensive player available, or David Bailey because they really need pass rush. They don't have a lot on that pass rush position. And I think you honestly go David Bailey. I'm going to have them go David Bailey out of Texas Tech. 15 sacks this year. He had an insane game in the college football playoff. I know they ended up losing that game, but he was really good against Oregon. I like David Bailey. Again, it's between him and Downs for me, but I'm going to go with David Bailey because I think they need edge rusher. Same thing with what I said with the Titans taking Ruben Bain. I just think edge rusher is more important of a position than safety. And I think David Bailey is good enough to be taken over Caleb Downs. However, I don't think Caleb Downs falls that much further because I am going to have the Saints take him at pick 8. They could go Jeremiah Love, but I like Devin Neal. I'm a fan of Devin Neal. I don't think they should necessarily replace him with Jeremiah Love quite yet. They could go with a pass rusher because Cam Jordan's getting up there in age, pair a guy alongside Chase Young. But again, with David Bailey off the board, are you going to take Cedric Folk or Cassius Howell at pick 8? Probably not. They don't necessarily even need safety because they picked up Justin Reed in free agency. I like Jonas Sanker, but how long can you ignore Caleb Downs on the board? To be honest, if you're the Saints, they could go receiver as well and get a guy like Mekhi Lemon because they just traded away a guy like Rashid Shaheed, that speedy deep threat guy, the shorter guy. But I think you can't pass up on a guy like Caleb Downs at 8 if you're the Saints, and that's who I think they should take here. And if the Commanders would have taken, if I would have had the Commanders taking Caleb Downs, I might have had the Saints then take David Bailey. Now, Chiefs are at 9. I think it's a no-brainer. You go Jeremiah Love because their running back room, Kareem Hunt's a solid, veteran depth running back guy that you can always rely on to get 2 yards or get a touchdown. Brashard Smith, I think, is the running back they got at SMU, if I'm not mistaken. I don't mind him either. Pacheco, I'm not the biggest fan of Pacheco. But when you can get a game changer like Jeremiah Love at pick 9, I think you got to take it if you're the Chiefs. We don't know what Mahomes is going to do with his injury. I think he's trying to play week 1, which is insane to me, but who knows? It could be possible. But I think if you have to have a backup quarterback in there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, just let him hand the ball off to Jeremiah Love. And maybe invest in your O-line in free agency and later in the draft to give him some better blocking. They got good interior O-linemen, with Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, but they need to work around those guys, especially if they invest this high into a running back. Bengals are up at 10. I think you just go best player available on defense, especially because they could use interior O-line here. As the website says, they could go center, they could go guard. The best guard available is Vega out of Penn State. You're not going to take him at 10. So without any interior linemen to consider here, I think it's best defensive player available. And I think it's either Peter Woods or Sony Styles are the two guys you probably look for here if you're going best defensive player available. Maybe a Cedric Folk if you lose Trey Hendrickson. But I think the best defensive player is Peter Woods, and I think that's what the Bengals should draft, is best defensive player. So I'm going to have the Bengals take Peter Woods here at pick 10. Dolphins at pick 11. You could go receiver, go with a Mekhi Lemon, or you could go with a corner like McCoy or Mansour Delane. Their defense was pretty bad, although it played a little better towards the end of the season. But for most part of the season, their defense was not very good. Again, I think it's receiver or corner because outside of Jalen Waddle, I don't mind Malik Washington, but outside of Jalen Waddle, they don't have a lot, especially if Tyreek Hill leaves. And corner, they don't have a lot. I think corner is a more important position for Miami than receiver. So I'm going to go Mansour Delane at corner for Miami. It was between him or Jermon McCoy. I don't know why. I'm going Mansour Delane. Cowboys at pick 12. I think Sony Styles is a great pickup here for Dallas. Again, similar thing with Cincinnati. I think they just need to go with best defensive player available. Their offense was one of the best in football. Like, their offense could do no wrong at some parts. Like, you have full faith in that offense. You need to go defense here if you're Dallas, especially with Jeremiah Love off the board. And Sony Styles, I think, is the best defensive player available. So I think the Cowboys go with Sony Styles. They need somebody next to Overshown, especially with Overshown's injury concerns. So I think Sony Styles is a great match for Dallas. Rams at 13. It says they need quarterback. I don't think the Rams take Ty Simpson at pick 13. They could go tackle. There's still plenty of good tackles. Spencer Fano, Francis Moaga, even a guy like Caden Proctor, Caleb Lomu. There's some very good tackles for the Rams. But I think the biggest need for the Rams is corner. That is the reason, in my opinion, they almost lost to the Panthers in the wild card game, is because they couldn't really match up with their receivers. I think they need to invest in the corner position, and the best corner available is Jermon McCoy out of Tennessee. So that's who I have the Rams take. And again, if the Dolphins would have taken McCoy, I would have had the Rams take Mansour Delane. You could easily flip-flop the two, but I think they both should go corner, especially the Rams, to be honest. I think that's their biggest need is corner. The Ravens are up at 14. It's tempting to go receiver here because outside of Zay Flowers, they don't have a lot because Bateman didn't have the best season. D-Hop's obviously getting up there in age. But is Makai Lemon, how similar is Makai Lemon to a Zay Flowers, right? Like, is he just very similar? He's 5'11", 195. Obviously, he's bigger than Zay Flowers because Zay Flowers is tiny. Zay Flowers is 5'9", 180. But how different are you getting? I mean, I could see them taking Makai Lemon, don't get me wrong. But I feel like Lamar has made it work with his receivers for so long. You could still invest in receiver later on the draft. Because there's always good receivers in drafts, like later, right? So I feel like the Ravens could target receiver in the second round, but I feel like they're missing that edge rush presence. Because their edge rushers are pretty old. You got Kyle Van Noy, their main guy. He's getting up there in age. Draymond Jones, I think, is their other edge rusher. Yeah, Draymond Jones, he's 29. They don't really got that young pass rushing talent that I feel like is better to utilize a first round pick on than receiver. And you got guys like Keldrick Folk and Cassius Howell right here available. So I'm gonna go Keldrick Folk to the Ravens. I think they need that elite pass rusher, that elite young pass rusher. And I think Folk can be that for them at pick 14. Buccaneers at pick 15, another team that I think should prioritize defense. When healthy, their offense is really good. They have the pieces. They have receivers. They have running backs. They have an O-line. They have their quarterback. They have a tight end. They got their offense set when healthy. Their defense, even when healthy, I think could still utilize some improvements. That's who I thought they were going to take last year in the draft was defense. They ended up taking Emeka Egbuka, which worked out for them at the beginning. Had a little bit of a down year, but I still think he's going to be fine. Now I think is when they use their first round pick on defense. They have a very older defense, guys like Levante David, Hassan Reddick as two of their top front seven guys. I don't know about Hassan Reddick, but I think similar to the Ravens need some young top tier pass rush. I think the Bucks need the same. So I'm gonna have them take Cassius Howell out of A&M at pick 15. The Jets at 16, they took Dante Moore at number 2. One thing I like, if you take a young quarterback high in the draft and you have another first round pick like the Jets do, you invest in that quarterback. And Makai Lemon's right here. And I think this is a great fit. Makai Lemon, Dante Moore, two Big Ten quarterback receiver duo coming in at the same time. They can grow together. They can participate in rookie mini camp together. Again, another team that could utilize some defense. But I think if you can get two really talented offensive players together in the same draft class, I think that's an opportunity the Jets should take. So I think they should take Makai Lemon at pick 16. Lions at pick 17. They could go with O-line here, Spencer Fano, Moaga, but Spencer Fano is a right tackle, and Francis Moaga is a right tackle. Not saying these guys couldn't, shift over to play left tackle, but the Lions have their right tackle set. That's Penei Sewell, one of the best players in all of football. So do you want to have to make one of these rookies play left tackle? I don't know. The best left tackle available is Caden Proctor, like player that played left tackle in college. And you're not going to take Caden Proctor here at 17, right? So I think if they're not going to go O-line, they shift their attention to defense. I think they could use a corner, and they could also utilize a pass rusher alongside Aiden Hutchinson. So you could go Romello Height and get that pass rusher next to Hutchinson, or you could go with Avion Terrell and get that corner. Avion Terrell is an outside corner, which I think fits well for them, because they got why am I forgetting his name? They got Terrion Arnold out of Alabama, uh, 2 drafts ago. He's been okay, but outside of that, at the corner position, it's DJ Reed, Amik Robertson, Rock Sin, Ennis Rakestraw. I mean, Brian Branch might be your best corner, but he's a safety. So I think they need corner more than they need pass rush, because at pass rush, you got Al Quandin Muhammad, who's looked solid at times. So I'm going to go Avion Terrell here to the Lions at 17. Now, with the Vikings at 18, the Lions taking Terrell is very unfortunate for them, because I would have liked them to take a corner. But the next best corner is Colton Hood out of Tennessee. Are you really going to take Colton Hood here at pick 18? I'm not sure. But if the Vikings aren't taking Colton Hood, what do they do? There's Caleb Banks. Do they really need D-line? Because they have good players like Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, but they are getting up there in age. So maybe they want some youth in that D-line room and get Caleb Banks. I don't think they really need tackles, right? I think if they're going to go O-line, they go more in the interior. But again, they invested in the interior with guys like Donovan Jackson, Will Fries, and Ryan Kelly, who they brought from Indianapolis. They probably are okay at receiver. It says here that you need a running back, but if you look at the running backs available, you're not going to take Jonathan Coleman at pick 18. Denzel Boston, they don't need. Romello Height, they could go with pass rush and go Romello Height. But I think if you're not really drafting for need, because the Vikings don't really have any players worth taking here at 18 that fits their need, the best guy available that is actually in need of Minnesota is probably Colton Hood here at 31. That's where he's projected. So I'm gonna have them take best player available and go Caleb Banks out of Florida. It might not be the best pick for them, but again, they do have a very old D line room, so maybe bring in some youth. Caleb Banks can come and he can learn from those guys in that D line room, like Hargrave, like Jonathan Allen. I don't really love the pick, but I don't really know where else Minnesota would go. I could honestly see them trading down at that point and being in range of a guy like Colton Hood. But we're not doing trades in this draft, so I'm gonna have them take Caleb Banks at 18. Panthers at 19 is another interesting team. Now, their left tackle, Aquanu, we don't know what's going to happen with him. He got hurt in the playoffs, so they might have to shift their attention and go get a tackle. But again, if they're going tackle, they probably want a left tackle. So I don't know if they want to use that on a guy like Fanu or Moaga. I don't think they need receiver, at least not drafting a receiver. If they get a receiver, I think they should get like a veteran receiver to pair alongside their young guys. Because Coker and McMillan played great in that playoff game, so you don't need to. I think you're okay at you like regarding young receivers. They could go with an interior guy to pair alongside Derek Brown. Could go pass rush because they don't really get a ton of that. But I think the Panthers need more weapons for Bryce Young. I just don't think they need receivers in the draft. But you know who they could draft? Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon. The best tight end in college football, the best tight end in the draft. Why not just stack up on weapons for Bryce Young? I'm going to have the Panthers take Kenyon Sadiq. So then you get McMillan, Coker, and Sadiq as your big three pass catchers for Bryce Young, who I do think is their quarterback of the future after what I saw in the playoffs. Again, at least he's your quarterback for the next 2 years. So why not get Kenyon Sadiq? Cowboys at 20. I was between two players here. I think they could go Romello Height, just build up on that defense that was really bad last year. But I also don't mind a tackle here for Dallas because I've been talking about how these two top tackles they played right tackle in college, and all the teams that need linemen probably want a guy more targeted at playing left tackle. Because left tackle is the blind side. It's more of the important tackle position for most teams, which is why they tend to already have their guy at left tackle and not necessarily their guy at right tackle. The Cowboys, now they've invested in their O-line. They got the two Tylers, Tyler Smith, Tyler Guyton. They've invested a lot in the O-line. And normally I would be like, they've spent so many first round picks on the O-line. Do they do it again? But they got an extra first round pick in the Micah Parsons trade. So it's not like their only first round pick is once again used on a lineman. It's their second first round pick. And their right tackle is Terrence Steele, who is 28. Spencer Fanu is probably the best player not only available, but the best lineman available. I'm going to have Dallas Cowboys go Spencer Fanu. I know I could have had them take Romello Height to beef up that defense even more. But honestly, why not? You have an additional first round pick from the Micah Parsons trade. I know it'd be interesting to use that on a pass rusher to, you know, you trade Micah Parsons and the pick that you got from him turns into another pass rusher. But they got their defensive stud in the first round in Sony Styles. Why not get your right tackle of the future? And you can move on from Terrence Steele. Pittsburgh at 21, they need receiver help, in my opinion. Another team that could go tackle, but it's also another team similar to Dallas that has invested a lot in their tackles recently. Their receiver room is not good. Outside of DK Metcalf, they don't have a lot. You saw when DK Metcalf was suspended for those 2 games, what their receiver room looked like. They had no one to throw to. And Denzel Boston's right here for them. And he's 6'4", so you can get a massive you already have DK Metcalf, who's humongous. You got Darnell Washington, who's the biggest tight end in football. Why not get another 6'4" guy in Denzel Boston and just create the biggest pass catching room in the NFL? They need receiver help. I like the fit of Denzel Boston to Pittsburgh. Chargers at 22, they need to draft O linemen, mainly interior O linemen. Their tackles are set when healthy. Alton Slater is an elite tackle duo. Their interior the O line, healthy or not, is horrible. And Vega from Penn State is right here. He can play left guard. He's had experience playing right guard. They need help on the interior O line more than any other team. I think this is a perfect fit for them. If they don't walk away with him, I'll be upset, to be honest. At least initially, because draft orders and big boards change from now till draft time. The big board and the order of prospects is going to change drastically. But at the moment, I think this is a perfect fit for the Chargers. Philly at 23, another team that could use pass rusher in a guy of Romello Heights' ability, or even TJ Parker. But I think they are an intriguing suitor for Francis Mauigoa. That might be a better pronunciation. He is a right tackle, as I've said probably 500 times today. And their current right tackle is Lane Johnson. And we don't know how long Lane Johnson has left in the NFL. And now you add on top of Lane Johnson's age, you add on top all the injuries that he dealt with this season. And not only that, but the impact it has had on this Philly offense. Because their O line was once the best in football. It's now gotten older. Jason Kelsey's retired. Lane Johnson's getting older. And that has, we have seen the effect. You can, because I think you can blame the play calling and the other players around the team. But I think the O line being worse has played potentially the biggest role in this Philly offense not looking the same. And if you can get your Lane Johnson replacement in the draft and have him for 10, 15 plus years, just like Lane Johnson, I think you do that. So I'm at Maui Goa from Miami. I'm gonna have him go to Philly. Defense might be a bigger need for Philly, but I think you have seen the impact of this O line not being the same. And I think this can help them potentially get back to that. He may not be Lane Johnson, but if he can be pretty close to it, I think that's a great pick. Cleveland at 24. They went ahead and took Jordan Tyson at pick 6. I don't think they need Caden McDonald. They have Mason Graham. I don't think they necessarily need a pass rusher. So I don't think they need Romello Height or TJ Parker, although having Romello Height, Myles Garrett, and Mason Graham sounds pretty nice. I think again they need offense. Their defense is one of the best in football. Their offense is horrible. You don't need receiver anymore with Jordan Tyson. Maybe you could go receiver later in the draft, but I don't think you take 2 receivers in the first round. I don't think you need quarterback. You're good on running back. You're good on tight end. They could use some help on the O line. I'm going to have Caden Proctor going to the Cleveland Browns. Beef up that O line. Keep Shedeur upright because you can have all these weapons. You can have Jerry Jeudy, Jordan Tyson, Harold Fannin, Quinshon Judkins, and Dylan Sampson. You can have all those guys for Shedeur, but if you can't keep them upright, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to have Caden Proctor going to Cleveland to try and help keep Shedeur upright. Chicago at 25. I think it's easily between Caden McDonald and Romello Height. I think one of their biggest needs is that D-line room. Because Austin Booker has surprised me, especially in that playoff game. He had a great game. So I don't know if edge rusher is necessarily at the top of their needs. I think Montez Sweat and Austin Booker is a good 1-2 punch at that edge rush position. But on the interior side of things, it's Grady Jarrett and Gervon Dexter as their interior D linemen. I think you could use some upgrades to that position room. So I think they go Caden McDonald over Romello Height and TJ Parker. I think they prioritize the interior D line, and he's clearly the best interior D lineman available outside of Christian Miller from Georgia. Bills at 26. I think the Romello Height quote unquote slide ends here in Buffalo. I think edge rusher is a very important position for the Bills, mainly defense as a whole. They could go receiver. You could get a guy like Casey Concepcion. I did definitely think about them taking Casey Concepcion. But I think edge rusher is just a bigger need because outside of Greg Rousseau, it's Joey Bosa, who's very old, very up there in age. Why not get a guy like Romello Height, pair him alongside Greg Rousseau as your future edge rush duo? However, I think the Niners are actually a great fit for Casey Concepcion, another team that could use pass rush. If Height and Concepcion were flipped, I wouldn't be mad at it. But I really like Casey Concepcion as that deep threat speed guy that can take the top off the defense, give room for guys like Ricky Pearsall and Jawan Jennings and George Kittle when he comes back, and even Christian McCaffrey because he's a guy that you can throw to over the middle of the field from the backfield. You need that deep threat because it's not Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk's. I would be shocked if he plays in another game for the Niners. And in terms of youth at the receiver position, they really only have Ricky Pearsall. And I think Demarcus Robinson You saw a little bit of what Demarcus Robinson provided them last playoff game. I think Casey Concepcion can do that better and for longer because he's a rookie. So I think it's a great fit for Casey Concepcion in San Fran. They need some youth at that receiver position, especially if Brandon Ayuk does leave, like I think we all think he will. So why not? Because outside of him, there's no other receiver. The next best receiver is Elijah Surratt. I just feel like Concepcion fits them more than a guy like Elijah Surratt. And I think you're more likely to take Concepcion in the first round over Surratt. Houston is next at 28. Now you think that they should take offense. Why would Houston need to take defense? Their defense is arguably the best in the league. However, if you look at the top guys available, a lot of them are defense. TJ Parker, CJ Allen, Colton Hood, Christian Miller, R. Mason Thomas, Brandon Siss, Joshua Josephs. The top two offensive players available, according to PFF's rankings, is Caleb Lomu and then these two receivers, Surratt and Bell. I don't think they need receiver, especially after Higgins and Noel, who they got last year's draft, who have played well. You don't need a receiver on offense. I don't think they need tight end. I don't think they need tackle either. I think if they go offensive line, they go interior, but there's no interior lineman worth taking in the first round. It says they need running back, but not only do I think they may be okay without taking a running back in the first round, there is also not any running backs worth taking in the first round. So I think, despite potentially it seeming like they don't need defense, I think they go defense. And according to PFF, their one need on defense is interior defensive line. Well, Christian Miller from Georgia is right here at that interior defensive line position. And what better situation for a guy like Christian Miller to walk into than playing alongside Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson? He's going to get so many opportunities because all the attention obviously is going to go to those two guys that he might, if they get an interior D lineman, he can probably have a very successful season because no one's going to be paying attention to the rookie when you got those two guys to worry about. Rams at 29. It says they need quarterback. Again, I don't think Ty Simpson ends up going in the first round. I think the Rams, if they want to take a quarterback as their Stafford replacement, I think they hold off because I think even if Ty Simpson is a first round quarterback, I think there are plenty quarterbacks the Rams can look at in the second round that are better, maybe not better than Ty Simpson, but are just as good of options on top of adding a good player at 29, especially with who I'm going to have them take at 29, and that's Caleb Lomu out of Utah. They need help at the tackle position, and if you're going to go quarterback in the second round, say they get Garrett Nussmeier or Trinidad Chambliss. What other quarterbacks are there? Nussmeier, Chambliss, Mateer, even Ty Simpson in the second round. You're giving him a franchise tackle to build with. So I don't hate it. I'd rather have Lomu and a quarterback in the second round than a guy like Ty Simpson at 29 and a second round tackle. So I think, and even for Stafford, they need a tackle too. Because again, I think their biggest position of need is corner. But we already had them take Jermod McCoy at pick 13. So I don't think they need two corners, even though they could go both Tennessee corners, which I guess would be fun. But I think outside of corner, a need for them is definitely tackle, and Lomu is clearly the best tackle available. New England at 30, I think they could also utilize offensive linemen, but with Lomu off the board, I don't think you're going to take linemen here at 30. And I think outside of line, they need, as the website also says, pass rush linebacker. TJ Parker, CJ Allen, pick your choice. TJ Parker's the best player available out of the two, so I'm going to have New England go TJ Parker because their pass rush unit is Harold Landry and Kayvon Chase. I never knew how to pronounce his name. Kayvon Chason. I think they could use a first round talent edge rusher alongside those guys. So I think TJ Parker is a slightly more important need than CJ Allen at linebacker. However, CJ Allen does not go much further here because I'm going to have him go to the Denver Broncos. Their current linebacker core is Dre Greenlaw and Alex Singleton. Alex Singleton is over the age of 30. Dre Greenlaw is almost at the age of 30, and he has all those injury history. Get some youth in that linebacker room. Bring in a guy like CJ Allen. I trust Georgia linebackers as well. They normally have a pretty good reputation because they're another team that could use some offensive weapons, like a running back, like a tight end. I think they're fine at running back with R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins, but they could use a tight end, maybe even a receiver. I don't think you go Elijah Surratt. There's no tight end worth taking. Again, they could use some youth at that linebacker room, so I like C.J. Allen. And finally, at pick 32, the Seahawks. Similar to Houston, it seems like, well, the Seahawks have one of the best defenses in the league. They should take offense. However, Houston took defense, New England took defense, and Denver took defense. Sometimes, even if it feels like their defense is so good that they should invest in the offense, there's just not players worth taking on the offensive side of the ball that Seattle needs. Running back, there's no running backs worth taking at 32. There's no interior lineman worth taking at 32. The website doesn't have it, but I could honestly see them investing high in a receiver because outside of JSN, you have Cooper Kupp, who's old, Rashid Shaheed, who they traded for but haven't used as much as I thought they would. And outside of Rashid Shaheed and JSN, they don't have any young other receivers that are young. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they got a guy like Elijah Surratt or Chris Bell. But I think they could, not only do they not necessarily need receiver, but I think they could get that type of guy later in the draft. I'm going to have them take, honestly, just the best player available, and that's Colton Hood out of Tennessee. They could use some corner, because I know they got Josh Jobe, Tariq Woolen, Devon Witherspoon. We don't even know how much they like Tariq Woolen over there in Seattle. I'm zooming out so you can see the full first round draft board here as a quick recap while I talk about Seattle. I don't really know how much they like their corners that they have there, to be honest, even though I think they're really good. And again, the players they could use on offense weren't really worth taking at 32, so why not go best player available in Colton Hood? But that will conclude our first round post regular season mock draft. Again, I know it's coming out a week late, but it's still pretty. And there were some teams in the wild card that I still think are teams worth talking about when it comes to the draft, like the Panthers and Pittsburgh and Green Bay and the Chargers. So I thought let the wild card weekend finish. I know we still have Houston versus Pittsburgh, but let the wild card weekend finish, and then we'll do our post regular season mock draft. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.